What's up, Mecha fans, and welcome back to the channel. So today, for the last time, we're going to be heading back to 2024, but today we're talking about all of the first time mecha anime watches that I had in that year, and we're going to be ranking them in a tier list from worst to best. Before I get into the list though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comment section below, let me know what mecha anime you watched for the first time in 2024, whether it's stuff from a couple of years ago or even stuff from going back all the way to the 1970s or something like that. Just let me know all that down in the comment section below. You guys know the drill. If you've ever watched any of my tier list videos in the past, we've got a total of 6 tiers this time. We've got S, A, B, C, D, and I have included F. Most of the time I don't include that, but it is appropriate in this case. Kicking things off with a big one, and that is Macross Plus Movie Edition, which I did watch for the first time this year, as with all these that I'm going to talk about. I watched this back in October theatrically, and that definitely enhanced the experience. I think getting to watch like any classic movie, especially something that's as well animated as this one on the big screen with the great surround sound, all that kind of stuff, like it's just a great experience, especially for first time. And Macross Plus Movie Edition was phenomenal. I do have a review of it, and I gave it an A initially. Now, this is one that as I've sat more with it, I love it that much more. My issue, I guess, with the film was that there's like a couple of sequences where it's almost like a hyperspace type thing from Star Wars, and they use like really bad CGI. But it's really not that big a deal. Like, I kind of made it out as if it was a bigger deal than it was, and I don't think it really bothers me. For me, this is actually an S tier one. It would have been an A tier, but I'm putting this one up in S tier. This one's really grown on me, and I already loved it on initial viewing. It's such an exciting film, but it's also timely and probably was ahead of its time in terms of the ideas that it explores with AI. It's such a fantastic film. If you guys haven't seen Macross Plus, either watch the movie edition or the OVA. I haven't watched the OVA version, but I think either way you watch this, it's a great story. Moving on though, we've got Patlabor the movie. This one I do enjoy. I don't love it as much as some people do though, and it's probably the same with the Patlabor movies in general. I don't get the huge wave of hype aside from one that we're going to talk about actually right at the end here, but this first one is solid. I think he's got some really good ideas. Again, much like with Macross Plus, probably ahead of its time, especially considering this one came out in, what was it, 1987 or something like that, or 1981. I can't remember exactly when it came out, but it was sometime in the 80s, I want to say, and it's a damn good movie, don't get me wrong. Like, it's got really good ideas that it explores. Visually, it's spectacular, great action, really good third act when it comes to the mecha action that you've got going on there. And like I said, it's very timely in terms of its themes that it's exploring evolution and the idea of technology kind of taking over. You've also got a really good villain in here that's like always ahead of all of our characters, so there's really good like a mystery element and chase that's on, if you will, to kind of solve this mystery. My issue with it is that it's fairly emotionally hollow. Like, I don't really care about all the characters in this film. It's the same for the Patlabor franchise in general. I could never really get into the characters. Having said that, I've only seen the movie trilogy, so maybe it would help to have watched the series, but I'm basing this like on my thoughts on what I've seen. And as much as I do think this is a really good movie, it is going to go in B. It's still one of the top tiers, but I don't think it's quite as good as some people do. Next up though, we've got Code Geass, Lelouch of the Resurrection. This is the sequel film that came out in 2019, which does follow on from the original series, but it's more so a sequel to kind of the abridged films that they made, where they did make some changes there. And this one, we're going to talk more about Code Geass throughout this video, but for this one, I don't like it. And I just fundamentally disagree with the idea of bringing Lelouch back, which I guess, spoiler alert for Code Geass, the original series, Lelouch dies at the end, and it's a big moment. Like, it is the crux of the series, and it's such a fantastic ending that to bring him back is such a disservice to that whole idea. And I get it, like, that stuff still exists and all this kind of thing, but I just fundamentally disagree with bringing the character back. The only thing I like about the film really is that it wasn't planned, like in terms of Lelouch. It wasn't like some grand plan that he had to come back. It was against his wishes as well. So in many ways it does mirror the audience a little bit, but just because you're doing something, just because you're coming up with an excuse for it, you're still doing it. So I just fundamentally disagree with it. It's an enjoyable enough film, but I don't think it really warrants, kind of turning back on that twist. So again, this is just a film that I fundamentally disagree with its existence, and I don't think it's an amazing film either. So we're going to sit it into D tier, unfortunately. Next up, we've got Gundam Seed, the original Gundam Seed series. This is, and I love this one. You guys probably know, like a lot of people, a lot of you guys have come to my channel watching my Gundam Seed content, and I guess it's kind of, I don't want to say it's changed my life, but it's changed the trajectory of this channel, where now I purely talk about mecha stuff, and that is mainly because of Seed Freedom and, you know, all the stuff around that. I love the Seed franchise, the Seed story. I love the characters involved in here. The only thing that really holds Seed back for me is the fact that I'd already seen like the original Mobile Suit Gundam story play out, because this is like more of a remake, not like a remake directly, but it was more of like a reimagining of original Gundam for a newer audience. It does follow that series and that story, whether you watch the compilation films or whether you watch the actual series, pretty much beat for beat. Like, not exactly, but for the most part, at least in terms of plot line. But it's still really good. Like, I still enjoy that plot line. I love the characters. I love the world that's set up and the dynamics, especially, you know, your core relationship between Kira and Athrun, I think, is a great rivalry to have, and I think they developed that really, really well throughout the series, and it's just great in general. So I'm going to go up in B with this one. We're going to put it right at the top of B, though. Next up, staying on the Seed franchise, we've got Seed Astray MSV. Now, this is essentially a glorified promotional animation for the manga, but it also does its job. I haven't read the manga yet, but it's got me interested to read the manga, and that's kind of all it's supposed to do. It's only 5 minutes long, and like I said, it is glorified promotion for the manga to try and sell it to people and get them to read it. But the actual animation itself is decent enough for something that's really, really short. And like I said, like, it got me interested in potentially reading the manga because it shows a different side to the Cosmic Era universe, where, you know, you got one of the characters that's more of like part of a junker group, the other that's part of a mercenary group, and that just adds a different angle to this world, a different perspective on it that's not just the Earth versus space people. This one works for what it is, but like I said, it's basically just a glorified promo. So we're going to sit it in C. Next up, we got Gundam Breaker Battlogue, and much like with Seed Astray MSV, this is like a glorified kind of promo thing. It's a short, like, mini-series, ONA, whatever you want to call it, that's, what, 6 episodes long. Each episode is maybe 10 minutes max, so it's generally not a very long thing at all. The animation's good. It's got great mobile suit designs, which they did make kits of, and there's still some of them that I'd like to pick up, but it doesn't deliver anything truly spectacular, like in terms of storytelling or anything. But at the same time, because it is so short, it physically is not able to. Like, from a script and story perspective, there's just not enough room to truly develop a lot of these characters. But Battlogue works for what it is. I enjoyed my time with it. We're going to sit it in C tier. Moving back over to Code Geass, we've got Code Geass Akito the Expelled. This one is quite an unfortunate situation because I feel like the setup for it is so good, and there's a lot of ideas in here that are really, really good, but I think the actual execution and delivering on a lot of the stuff isn't that great. Like, especially when you get towards the end, the eventual, like, payoff and just some of the ideas and even some plot lines that are practically thrown out. It's not a mess, but it has a lot of messy elements, and it just isn't as good as the sum of its parts, or whatever the quote is. It's got good ideas, it has really good moments in it, but as a whole, as a complete package, I don't think it's truly that great. Nothing has ever lived up to the original Code Geass series. I guess when you set the bar that high, it's really difficult to, but Akito the Exiled, it's not bad. Like I said, it's got some really good stuff within it. So we are going to sit this one in C tier. I am actually going to put it above the other two, just simply because it's more of a complete story and offers a little bit more, but it is also a little bit flawed as well. Next up is a complete outlier in this tier list, and that is Expelled from Paradise. Now, out of everything that I'm going to talk about in this video, this is the only thing that I have not already talked about on the channel. That's because I didn't care to review it, but also the second one is supposed to come out in 2026, so I figured I'll just wait till then, and I'll talk about it then. But yeah, Expelled from Paradise, it's not good. I wanted to like this one, and I guess, I want to say I hyped myself up for it, but I didn't really. I like the visual look of the main character, maybe potentially decent ideas and world building in here, but the actual story itself is so meh and bland and just really offers nothing new. And it's a shame, really, because it's got a really good team behind it, which are also returning for the second one. So I would like to think that maybe if they're coming back after 12 years by the time the second one comes out, I hope that there's a story there to tell, there's something that they want to offer, because like I said, the actual team behind it have made some really good stuff in the past. I think they've worked on like Psychopaths and probably a lot of other things as well that are good. But unfortunately, this one I don't think is good. So unfortunately, we are going to sit this one into F tier. And spoiler alert, I guess it is the only one that's going to be in that tier. Moving on to something a little more positive now, we've got Gundam Seed Destiny, and here's where my big hot take comes in. I absolutely love this series, and I know people don't like it. I know people have massive issues with the back half of this series. I love everything this thing has to offer. Do I recognize the problems that it has and maybe the complete shift towards Kira being the main character as opposed to Shin? Yeah, like I understand the criticism of that, but I think the storytelling in this one is better. I think it's, to me, more interesting. And also, Athrun is practically like secondary lead. He is my favorite character within the Seed franchise. He's possibly my favorite Gundam character. So for him to be like at the forefront of this entire series along with Shin, I think is great. And everyone seemed to hate Shin in Seed Destiny, and now everyone's turned around on him for Seed Freedom. I've always liked him. I always thought he was good in Seed Destiny. Is he kind of emo type character? Sure, but he lost his whole family, so it makes sense why he's in that position. I think that Seed Destiny is fantastic, so I'm putting it in A tier. Maybe a little bit of a hot take. Like I said, I recognize that there are some problems that people have, but I just love this one too much. Back onto the patlabor franchise now, we've got W13 Patlabor the Movie 3. I believe that's how the title plays out. It's weird because this is one where I seem to think people didn't like it, and then I watched it and I thought, that's actually pretty good. I think it's probably about on par maybe with the first one. But I guess my issue with this one is that it leans more into kaiju stuff. And for me, the patlabor franchise, I think, is probably at its best when it's a little bit more grounded in reality. To me, patlabor as a franchise is like the Ghost in the Shell of Mecha in many ways. It's also like the first two movies anyway from the same director as Ghost in the Shell, so I guess that kind of makes sense. I like the third one. I think the third one actually has the best characterization and it probably has the most emotion to it. It's the most emotionally investing of the three, and despite the fact that, like I said, I don't really like the idea of doing kaiju in patlabor. I don't think it doesn't quite work for me personally, so I prefer it when it's taking more of a grounded approach or something that's a bit more, you know, like thematically within the realm of sci-fi and technology and kind of looking to the future and these changes within the world, but like I said, still very much grounded in reality. And I feel like when you put kaiju stuff in there, it kind of removes a little bit of the realism. Still can be good, and it is still a really good film, but we are going to sit this one in B. I think purely on the fact that it has more to offer emotionally. I also like the core dynamic of having the older and younger detective. That always works for me. I think I'm actually going to put this one just above the first one, but they are pretty much neck and neck. And now we're back onto Seed again. This is the last Seed thing that I'm going to talk about, and that is Gundam Seed Stargazer. Now this is an interesting one because if this was a lot longer than it was, I'm thinking like a 6-episode OVA, maybe even longer than that. This could very well be in the conversation for the best content from the Seed franchise, because it feels the most, I guess, traditionally Gundam in terms of it being a little bit more darker and more serious, and the way that it explores the cosmic era in that way, I think is very interesting. And much like with Astray MSV, gives us a very different perspective on the world. You've got essentially brainwashed child soldiers, which is something that's always been a thing within Gundam, but it was never fully explored in Seed Destiny when it was brought into play. Also not fully explored in Seed, but they explore it a little bit more in this one. This would have been top tier if it was longer. The biggest issue it has is that it is so short, so you're rushing through a lot of stuff and you're not giving it the time to fully develop everything. But in terms of ideas and in terms of different perspective on the world, also in terms of mobile suits as well, this one is really, really good. And I gotta say, it's maybe a little bit underrated too. The Strike Noir is probably a top 5 mobile suit design in the Seed franchise for me. So we are going to sit this one in B. I think I'm going to put it above the 2 patlabor movies, but we're going to put it below the original Seed. Next up though is another big one, and that is Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, an all-time classic series, which I watched for the first time this year and absolutely loved. If you want to watch my review, you can go see it. It is on the channel. Spoiler alert, I gave this S tier. So obviously it is going to go in S tier within this video. The question is, does it go above Macross Plus movie or does it go below? I don't want to say this thing has gone down over time, but it has just a tad bit. Only very slightly, because I think I was a little bit too high on the ending and everything like that. So there's maybe bits here and there in this series that aren't top tier. But it's still a fantastic show overall. And I think because it's got such a great lead character and such a great character journey for him and character arc, and obviously the ending is an all-timer in terms of anime. So yeah, it is going in S tier, but I think I'm inching Macross Plus movie over it, just because one is a movie, so like it's more easily rewatchable, but also I don't know, I've come to love that movie a lot more than I already did, which, like I said, I still really loved it upon first watch, but on further inspection, I love it more. Yeah, it's the same with Lelouch the Rebellion. I think it's a fantastic series. It's in S tier for a reason. It's got a great, like, fantastic world building in it and setup. It's got a really good supporting cast as well. Not every character is top tier, but there's a lot of really fantastic characters in here that do have great character arcs, and at the core of it is Lelouch, one of the all-time great anime MCs. I'm willing to put him in the conversation of top 10 of all time. Like, if you put him together, you can never put together a truly objective list, but if we're going to go like the traditional route of, you know, Screen Rant or whatever when they do the top 10 lists, I think that Lelouch could very well be in the conversation for all-time greats. And as far as series goes, Code Geass was my favourite that I watched in 2024 when it comes to first-time watchers. Next up, we've got another Gundam series in the 8th MS team, one that is very, very popular and very beloved by a lot of people. Now, I was super excited for this series because I'd heard great things about it. I do like grounded Gundam, like that's always really good, and you know, most of the time it is fantastic stuff. So I was looking forward to this one, but I think I overhyped myself a little too much because whilst I like it, I don't think it was anywhere near as good as people made it out to be. The best parts of the show weren't quite as good as people made it out to be. The animation is good, but it's not truly incredible in the way that people hyped it up to be. And I'm talking maybe specifically about the Easy 8 versus Goof Custom fight, which is a great fight, but I don't think it's like all-time great in the way that some people make it out to be. Still a good series though, and I think the fact that it's 12 episodes and doesn't really feel rushed at all, like it feels like it tells its story fairly well. Could have done with a little bit more development of like the supporting cast, but I think it's a well-told story. So this one is going to go into B tier. I'm not 100% sure where to sit it though. I'm leaning about here, but I think I'm going to go just above. I was just kind of expecting at least A tier, if not S tier, and unfortunately, it just wasn't as good as what I wanted it to be. Nonetheless though, it's still a really good series, don't get me wrong. Another major Gundam series that I watched last year was Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which I managed to finish like at the tail end of the year, and I believe that my review I put out on New Year's Eve, so I did it just in time for the end of 2024. But this is a series where I think I respect it more than I truly do like it. And that's mainly because as a concept, G Gundam doesn't necessarily appeal to me because it's practically like a full-on tournament anime with Gundam, which, you know, it's immediately better just because it has giant robots in it. But tournament anime in general are not my thing, just because they kind of bore me a little bit, unless they're like incredibly well animated with like Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, all that kind of stuff, level of animation. I don't really vibe with them all that much. Basically, everything the series has to offer is action. If the action is not truly top tier, I just cannot engage with it as much as I want to. G Gundam though, because it has like another plot line of not tournament stuff, that's where I was really invested in it. The actual tournament stuff I didn't care too much for, but I think it's got a good cast. I think it's got great mobile suit designs. So it's a good series, and I definitely respect it and appreciate it for essentially like bringing back the Gundam franchise, but also taking it in the new direction. We wouldn't have things like Witch from Mercury, we probably wouldn't have Seed, we wouldn't have Gundam Wing. All these other series that have come out since in these alternate universes, they wouldn't exist if it wasn't for G Gundam. So I think I'm going to sit this one, I'm going to sit it in B, but I think I'm going to put it at the back. It's still a really good series, and I understand if someone says that it's their favourite Gundam series, I get it. It's just not wired to my taste. And last but certainly not least, we've got Patlabor, the movie 2. I'm saying it right now, this one is going in A tier, above Seed Destiny. There's maybe a little bit of more love that I have for Seed Destiny, just on a personal level, but Patlabor, the movie 2 is definitely better than it. This is a fantastic movie. This is like truly, in terms of the Patlabor franchise and the trilogy and the way that people hype up the movies, I get the hype for this one. Like, I really do. This is a phenomenal story that's got really great ideas in it that are explored very well. It's so intricate in terms of its moral compass, if you want to call it that. The ideas that it explores is so tuned into just this whole concept of like, what is war, what is peace, what's the kind of relationship between those two, can one exist without the other? If the whole idea of war does exist, can peace truly exist? If the thought of war is still there, can true peace exist? Really cool ideas that are just different but explored in such an interesting way and really make you think. Like, this is one of those movies that makes you think about things, and I really like that. It's also such a vibe, like, as a film, visually, and the soundtrack as well. This is one that I could throw on, like, if you watch this on a night time, it's got such an aesthetic and atmosphere that it builds up so well. And this is one that I do want to rewatch. I think, like, I don't care too much to rewatch the first and third one, but this is the second one. Is definitely one that I want to rewatch in the future, and it's a fantastic movie. It's also focused on the older characters, and I think because of that, it generally feels like a bit more mature. You're kind of following the more jaded characters, which to me is always really interesting. I always like watching that. So Patlabor the Movie 2 is the last one we're talking about, but like I said, it is certainly not least on this list. So there's my tier list ranking all of my 2024 Mecha Anime first time watchers. To go over things again, in S tier we've got Macross Plus Movie Edition and Code Geass Lelouch the Rebellion. In A tier we've got Patlabor the Movie 2 and Gundam Seed Destiny. In B tier we've got Gundam Seed, Gundam the 8th MS Team, Gundam Seed Stargazer, Patlabor Movie 3, Patlabor Movie 1, and Mobile Fighter G Gundam. C tier we've got Code Geass Akito the Exiled, Gundam Breaker Battlogue, and Gundam Seed Astray MSV. D tier we've got Code Geass Lelouch of the Resurrection, and then F tier we have Expelled from Paradise. Before I get out there, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of Mecha Anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comment section below. Like I said earlier, let me know what Mecha Anime you watched for the first time in 2024. What were some of your favourites? What were some of your least favourites? Let me know all that down in the comment section below. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.